In this video, we are going to be talking about how strong is the Marvel Comics Godzilla of Earth 616. If I sound a bit moody on this particular subject, it's because in order to do the research, I had to delve into the messy history of Marvel Comics. Seriously, we're talking like at least half a century's worth of comic book history. This stuff retcons itself on a regular basis at the drop of a hat. They've been making Spider-Man comics since the 1960s, yet Peter Parker's still in like his mid-20s? For God's sakes, Eddie Brock, aka Venom, already has a grown-up son. It's like, how old is Spider-Man at this point? I mean, just look at this. Nightcrawler's Spider-Man, Venom's some weird god thing, and Spider-Man's the Green Goblin? It's like, what even is Marvel Comics at this point? I'm not even sure when the Marvel Comics Godzilla story even takes place. I mean, just look at the Marvel Database website where there's an entire, just look at this. Look at this glossary, sliding timescale. There's like an entire article just trying to explain the passage of time in the Marvel Comics universe. I think I read somewhere that every 5 years that passes in the real world is 1 year that passes in the Marvel Comics universe, but even that's a bit sketchy since some of the older comics reference like real world events like, oh, the Thing was a pilot in World War II. No, just kidding. Now he's just a test pilot, and this was after World War II. It's like, make up your mind, people. DC Comics doesn't have this problem, probably because they retcon their timeline every couple of years. But I will try to the best of my ability to explain what the heck is going on. So without further delay, let's get started. To start off, let's talk about where this Godzilla originated from. Apparently, this Godzilla was spawned during Pacific nuclear bomb tests in the 1950s. The first recorded moment of Godzilla showing up was when he attacked Tokyo in 1956. Interesting. That's the same year the American version of the original Godzilla movie came out in theaters in the US. Apparently there's been history of this Godzilla attacking other unidentified monsters in the past, so he's definitely gotten a few wins under his belt at this point. There's no mention of the oxygen destroyer being used to attack him, so I guess this is the only Godzilla in this entire timeline. Apparently at some point he became trapped in the ice off the coast of Alaska, where he would break free during the quote-unquote modern age of Marvel Comics. Modern age basically being used to refer to, well, the modern age of Marvel Comics. Don't ask me what year that is, I'm still wondering that to this day. The first issue starts off pretty simple. Godzilla breaks free of the ice and goes on a rampage at a nearby oil refinery. This gets the attention of the spy agency known as S.H.I.E.L.D., and they assemble a new task force, the Godzilla Squad, led by Dumb Dugan. I am not making that name up. His name is literally Dumb Dugan. A former circus strongman and US military veteran, and best friends with Nick Fury, the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., to lead this task force against the monster. Issue 2 has Godzilla going on another rampage in Seattle. Note how tall he is compared to the Space Needle. We'll talk about that subject in a little bit. S.H.I.E.L.D. fights him, and they manage to lure him away from the city using bright lights. Kind of like how they lured away the Showa Godzilla in Godzilla Raids Again. And they managed to blast him back into the ocean. This is, of course, a temporary minor victory, but kudos for actually driving him off, I guess. Issue 3 is where things start to get complicated. See, Godzilla shows up in San Francisco, towering to about the same height as the Golden Gate Bridge, again, a topic for later, and fight against a group of not very well-known heroes called the Champions. There's not really much to note about this group of heroes. They're not even that fondly remembered by themselves. But the two most notable people that take part in this battle is Iceman and Hercules. Now, the thing about Iceman is, his power seems to be at least multi-city block level to likely town level, due to creating a giant iceberg and blowing up a building with ice. But here's the thing. Anyone who's more familiar with this character in Marvel Comics know that he apparently got quite the power-up. By tapping into more power than ever before, Iceman is apparently capable of freezing time itself, and became what is known in the Marvel Universe as an Omega-level mutant, basically meaning that his power has no true limit. So basically, Iceman is what is apparently deemed high hyperverse level, which is way beyond universe level in terms of power, and was able to fight against an even more powerful version of the God of Thunder, Thor. But here's the problem with this. This kind of feat came way later in the years of Marvel, and to be authentic as possible, I'm only going to be counting feats that existed at the time of this comic book series publishing. In other words, Iceman's only like town level at most. No high hyperverse Omega level power for you. We're only sticking with feats that existed at the time of this comic series publishing. The other character of note is Hercules, a character who has consistently fought on par with Thor multiple times throughout the comics. He even fought the Hulk at one point in Tales to Astonish number 79 from May of 1966. Most notable issues where he fought Thor was in Thor number 126, Thor number 221 and 223, which was March to May of 1974, and most notably in Thor number 400, Thor and Hercules were having a friendly sparring match where their friendly fight toppled entire mountains and threatened to knock the planet out of orbit. The champions try to fight Godzilla, but they're not really doing much, though Hercules does have an impressive moment where he's able to lift Godzilla's foot off the ground and knock him over. This is also impressive on Godzilla's part because Hercules is clearly struggling to lift his foot off the ground. Now, some people might argue, Hercules was holding back, he was losing like 1% of his power. Fair enough. However, when he was holding back in a friendly match against Thor, his power was still strong enough to topple mountains. So I'd say at the bare minimum, even if Hercules is like holding back a crap ton amount, I don't know why he'd have reason to hold back. There's no reason to suggest he's not trying to kill Godzilla here. At the bare minimum, the Marvel Comics Godzilla is mountain level in terms of power. But he could also be universe level in terms of power, because Hercules himself has stated that Thor is capable of shaking the universe itself. So Godzilla's true power is anywhere from mountain level to beyond universe level. Great! That's not too vague or wide of a power range at all. Anyway, Godzilla at one point just kind of buggers off. Yeah, the fight just kind of ends because Godzilla gets bored or something. I guess because he was hoping to fight Ghost Rider, who was apparently part of the champions during this time. Now that would have been interesting. You think Ghost Rider's pen and stare would do anything to Godzilla? What could have been. Another thing to note was that at the end of the first issue for Godzilla, the Marvel editor-in-chief had a section in the comic labeled Godzillagrams, which became a space for fan letters in subsequent issues. The first page included a one-panel comic showing the aftermath of a fight between Godzilla and the Hulk, where we see Godzilla walking away with the Hulk cursing vengeance whilst sent in a footprint. This part it may as well be considered non-canon since the Hulk never actually appeared in the Godzilla story proper, which I think is a real waste given that both of these would be perfect for fighting each other. Of course, if it was canon, that means that Godzilla just casually stomped the Hulk on his way through issue 2. Okay, now that I've devoured 2 chocolate donuts, I'm relaxed enough to continue on. Issues 4 and 5 have Godzilla battle a group of monsters controlled by, at the time, one-off villain called Demonicus. In the first issue, Godzilla fights against a monster called Yetrigar, who we later find out is actually the strongest of the 4 monsters Demonicus controls. These monsters have a weird weakness where if they go too far away from this energy source, they start to weaken and die. Pretty stupid weakness to have. How are you supposed to conquer the world if you have to keep these 4 monsters close to this power source at all times? The monsters themselves aren't anything special, Sure, Godzilla does take a little while to defeat them, but they don't seem to pose any notable challenge to the King of the Monsters. If I had to rank them from weakest to strongest based off what I've observed, from what I can tell, this is how they are ranked. First from weakest is Centaur, then Lepirax, then Gilaron, and then Batragon. Demonicus himself would eventually return to Marvel Comics, but not in the original 70s run we're currently talking about. Issue 6, S.H.I.E.L.D. manages to capture Godzilla after they put him to sleep, and they put him in this giant helicarrier called the Behemoth. But once he wakes out, he easily breaks out, and that's pretty much it. Issues 7 and 8 have Godzilla facing off against a newly built robot, Red Ronin, piloted by a Japanese teenager. Yep, it's one of those kind of stories. Now, this kid piloting Red Ronin, he's a Godzilla fan, which means he doesn't want to hurt Godzilla. He wants to resolve this peacefully. So he tries to lure Godzilla away from all the destruction and havoc. On his way to Godzilla, he just flies through a mountain. So, yep, there we go again. Godzilla has to be at least mountain level if he can take attacks from that. And Red Ronin soon arrives to deal with Godzilla. According to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Deluxe Edition number 10, published in September of 1986, Red Ronin has an official height of 102 feet and 4 inches and weighs 23.5 tons. Translating to meters, this makes Red Ronin roughly 31 meters tall. And Godzilla's definitely taller than him, but not by much. This is where we will finally address the question, how tall is the Marvel Comics Godzilla? And the answer is yes. See, in one shot, he's as tall as the Golden Gate Bridge. Another shot, he's as tall as the Space Needle. And in another instance, he's about maybe a third of the size of the Empire State Building. And it looks like he's maybe only about a quarter taller than Red Ronin, who's just barely over 30 meters. So maybe he's about 40 meters in this shot, which is way smaller than the other listed feats in terms of height. This isn't the first nor the last time where Godzilla's height would be a little inconsistent, but at least those Godzillas had a canon height. We have nothing to go on for this Godzilla. His height is as tall as the person drawing him wants him to be. The same goes for his weight, because apparently Red Ronin can only lift up to 30 tons. That's his lift capacity, according to the official handbook. So, yeah, Godzilla might not actually weigh that much if Red Ronin can slug him around and stuff. Then again, if he's able to punch through mountains, does he really need to worry about weightlifting? Yeah, probably not, but I still thought it was interesting to mention. It's mentioned that Red Ronin's trying to hold his power back when fighting Godzilla. He doesn't want to hurt him too badly after all. Although, all he has to do to get him to go away is just kind of point to the ocean, and then Godzilla, for whatever reason, just goes away. Okay. We're not going to talk about issue 9 because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Issues 10 and 11 have Godzilla and even Red Ronin facing off against the giant Yeti monster Yetrigar. Yetrigar was awakened in Canada due to bomb testing, and eventually, due to radiation, mutated to giant monster size. His journey would be halted in the Grand Canyon upon coming across Godzilla, and the two would engage in a brutal battle, where Godzilla's attacks were mostly tanked by Yetrigar. Not even his atomic breath was able to do anything against him. Despite being at a clear power disadvantage, however, Godzilla was still able to contend with Yetrigar until Red Ronin showed up to try and break up the fight, only to have to deal with Yetrigar as well. Yetrigar proved to be too powerful to be defeated by conventional means, so Red Ronin just caused an avalanche and buried Yetrigar under rubble. And that would be the last we see of Yetrigar until he eventually comes back many years down the line. This is the first time where this Godzilla's gone up against a foe that he was not really able to do anything against. Red Ronin was holding back, and you can even argue the same for Hercules as well, but nope, this monster was unquestionably stronger than Godzilla. The fact that he's nearly tanking every attack, I'd say gives him a 1.75 advantage over Godzilla. It's not really clear how strong his atomic breath is relative to this Godzilla's physical punches, so yeah, it's a bit confusing. Issues 12 through 14 have Godzilla trapped in the middle of a war between two alien races, the Batans and the Megans. The Batans kidnap Godzilla and transport him to the moon, where they set him to fight the Beta Beast, a monster so powerful it forces Godzilla into a rage state in order to give him the power he needs to overcome the Beta Beast. Since Godzilla didn't get a rage boost when fighting Yetrigar, I'm guessing that the Beta Beast was as big of a threat to force Godzilla to use this kind of power. So we're gonna say that the Beta Beast is a tier above Yetrigar at least, making him bare minimum 2 times stronger than base form Godzilla. Godzilla with the rage boost would obviously be stronger than the Beta Beast. Yeah, he basically pulls a Hulk where it's like his power is an equivalent to how angry he is, apparently. He also proves to have poison resistance, as he shows no injury from the Beta Beast's poisonous quills. This whole fight turned out to be a test set up by the Batans to test Godzilla's strength in order to fight against the Megans and their Mega Beasts. Apparently the aliens have judged that Godzilla is one of the 3 strongest beings currently residing on Earth, and as we see later, the Mega Monsters are sent to attack Red Ronin, so he's the 2nd strongest. Wonder who the 3rd one is. It might possibly be Yetrigar, since he turns out to still be alive later. Although we also find out that there's multiple Yetrigars, so yeah. You never get a concrete answer on who the 3rd of these 3 strongest Earth beings are. And keep in mind, this is including people like the Hulk and Doctor Strange and crazy stuff like that. Godzilla soon arrives back on Earth to assist Red Ronin in fighting off the first of the Mega Beasts, Triax. The 2 monsters start to overwhelm him until the Megans send their other 2 monsters, Raihan and Krolar. Man, these are ugly looking monsters. Raihan looks really freaky. The 3 Mega Monsters eventually decapitate Red Ronin, and to make matters worse, they get a power-up from some energy ray that was fired at them, leaving poor Godzilla alone to take on all 3 of them at the same time. Even with his rage boost isn't enough, and soon S.H.I.E.L.D. has to intervene in order to distract the monsters long enough for an angered Godzilla to take them down one at a time. So rage-boosted Godzilla is stronger than each of the powered-up Mega Beasts, at least individually, but it's still not enough to be able to take on all 3 of them at once, even if they weren't powered up, probably. After that grueling fight, we get good filler with issues 15 and 16 where a bunch of cowboys try to take down Godzilla. It's just fun, silly nonsense. A good break from all the trauma that was the last couple issues. Issue 17 begins the incredible shrinking Godzilla arc, where S.H.I.E.L.D. basically calls in help from Henry Pym to use his Pym particles, the stuff to do with Ant-Man, to shrink him down. It works, and Godzilla gets shrunken down to basically the size of a rat, but he still manages to slip away into the sewers where he has a fight with said rat. It's around this time that Godzilla slowly starts to return to his original weight, with him being roughly 6 feet tall as of the beginning of issue 19. He runs into that human team that was piloting Red Ronin, and he dresses him up in a disguise a la Ninja Turtles. But eventually he runs into S.H.I.E.L.D. and has a brief fight with Dum Dum Dugan. Now, how strong is Dum Dum Dugan exactly? Well, as mentioned before, he's a former circus strongman. He fought in World War II, and apparently is actually a life model decoy of the original Dum Dum Dugan's body. Yeah, apparently he was fatally injured, and Nick Fury basically uploaded his mind into a robot clone. This all happened before the Godzilla comic takes place, but it looks like the story itself was written many years later, because it looks like it has a newer art style. That's retcons for ya. If I had to guess, I'd say that he's probably at least wall level to possibly at most small building level. since even characters like Daredevil and Punisher scale to around there. Godzilla begins this fight at a new height of 7 feet, and while Dum Dum Dugan does get a few hits in on Godzilla, he's ultimately outmatched and easily smacked away. We reach issue 20 as Godzilla grows again to 12 feet tall, and has a fight with the Fantastic Four in a museum. Okay, I'm going to try and explain what happens next as carefully as possible because there's going to be a crap ton of references being dropped here. So Godzilla fights the Thing, and the Thing smacks him around, but Godzilla is also able to smack him around, and in one shot we see him taking attacks from both the Thing and the Human Torch at the same time. Now, how strong is the Thing and the Human Torch? Well, the Human Torch can generate enough power to equal an exploding star, and the Thing has fought against the Hulk multiple times, even at this point in the Marvel Comics. On top of that, Godzilla is able to break through the Invisible Woman's force fields, which were sufficient to halt even the Thing himself. So Godzilla's basically fighting against 3 beings who are all individually roughly about planet level in terms of attack power. Though the Thing does seem to have a clear strength advantage as he's knocking Godzilla around more often than Godzilla's knocking him around. And the Thing eventually knocks Godzilla into a tank of shards, ending the issue. So even if Godzilla's never canonically fought the Hulk, if we don't count that little joke panel at the end of the first issue as canon, he's fought against plenty of characters who have fought the Hulk at this point. Despite surviving attacks from the Thing and the Human Torch, apparently everyone's under the impression that a bunch of sharks can fight Godzilla to death. Somehow I don't think he has anything to worry about, but they help him out anyway. Mr. Fantastic manages to restrain Godzilla long enough to stop his breathing, knocking him out cold, leading into the rest of the plot for issues 21 and 22, where they not only send Godzilla to the distant past, but the distant past of another universe, specifically Earth 78411, the homeworld and universe of Devil Dinosaur. Devil Dinosaur didn't have a whole lot going on in his own series before this. In fact, the Devil Dinosaur comic actually debuted the same year in 1978. Since Devil Dinosaur is based off an original Tyrannosaurus Rex, he should be about the same height, being about 20 feet tall. This appears to be the same height that Godzilla is at as well. The two have a brief fight and appear to be evenly matched. Since Godzilla took hits from the Thing and the Human Torch and was able to break out of the Invisible Woman's force fields, which were able to restrain at least a younger the Thing, both characters should most definitely be at least planet level in terms of attack power at this point. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if at this point Godzilla could probably beat the Thing and the Human Torch if they had a second round, given that he's even taller now than he was in their first fight. Anyway, the fight ends in a draw, and the two team up to fight against some other dinosaurs in Bad Net for the next issue, until Godzilla finally regrows back to his full height and gets transported back to the Earth 616 universe. Our second to last issue of the main run has what we've all been waiting this whole time for: Godzilla vs. the Avengers. The fight doesn't really get started until the last few pages of the issue, where Godzilla basically knocks out most of the Avengers with his atomic breath, save for the Human Torch, who has to be smacked out of the air, pretty much one-shotted by Godzilla, leaving just Thor to face off against the monster. When Thor strikes Godzilla, it is, according to Godzilla's own inner monologue, thoughts, or narration, whatever, that it is the hardest he has ever been hit, putting Thor as the strongest opponent Godzilla has ever faced. This leads into Godzilla tapping into another rage boost at the end of the issue. We arrive at the start of the final issue, and it is here where Thor states that Godzilla is as strong as the Midgard Serpent. Now, what's the Midgard Serpent? Well, basically a giant serpent destined to kill Thor in a mutually assured destructive battle resulting in both fighters' deaths, and basically kickstart the Asgardian equivalent of the apocalypse. Seeing as how the Midgard Serpent has fought Thor, and again, the two are basically destined to kill each other in Mortal Kombat, or rather Immortal Kombat in this case, Yeah, I believe him. If he says that Godzilla's as strong as a being who is equal in power to Thor, then there you go, Godzilla is equal in power to Thor. With Thor himself questioning if he can even stop such a creature. This time, Godzilla with a rage boost is able to harm the Human Torch with his atomic breath, indicating that he did indeed get a power increase since the end of the last issue. At least a 10 times boost based off the last time something like this happened. The two push with all their strength against the Empire State Building with neither one budging, further cementing the fact that Godzilla is equal in power to Thor, the guy whose power can shake a whole universe. Godzilla then proceeds to get blasted by Iron Man and take attacks from all of the Avengers and Fantastic Four at the same time. And it's still not enough. Also, for some reason, this image is sideways. Unfortunately, just as the fight was getting good, the whiny teenager kid shows up and makes everyone stop fighting. And then Godzilla just kind of vanishes into the sunset back into the ocean. Oh, and Spider-Man shows up at the end to take a picture, which is actually what's used for the front cover of the last issue. Yeah, the story just kind of ends. Kind of anticlimactic. Things were just getting good with all the Avengers and the Fantastic Four attacking Godzilla all at once. Now, I think the last issue speaks for itself. Godzilla is universe level in terms of power. Whether or not that's with the rage boost is up for debate. And this is mainly have to do with how he fares against other heroes who have also fought against characters, who have fought against Thor or the Hulk. Yeah, a lot of this, it's like, oh, Godzilla's this strong because he fought this person, who fought this person, who fought this person, who did this one thing in this one comic in this one year. But as some of you may or may not be aware, we're not done. See, after this issue, the license to keep using Godzilla in the Marvel Comics expired, but that didn't stop some people from trying to get creative to get around with a loophole and keep using Godzilla in their stories. Enter this abomination from Iron Man issues number 193 and 194 from 1985. Or whatever counts for 1985 in the actual Marvel Universe, because this is when they started using their stupid time slider thing. So remember that Demonicus guy from way back in what was it, issue 5 or something? Well, he finally returns, and he somehow captured Godzilla, put him under mind control, and mutated him to turn into this hideous abomination. He sends him out to fight the West Coast Avengers. And the only two notable people in this fight is Iron Man himself and Tigra, who's apparently building to possibly large building level based off fighting some guy called Mayday, who I think is a Black Panther villain, apparently. Anyway, Godzilla's got Tigra on the ropes, and Iron Man basically has to lift up Godzilla and carry him out to the ocean. That's pretty much the fight. So, Tigra's physically the strongest member, so at least building level to possibly large building level, but Iron Man's the one who ultimately beats him by ring out. Hang on a second, that doesn't look like Iron Man's model forearmor he wore when fighting Godzilla. I can't help but shake the feeling I've seen that design before. Let me check here. According to this, Iron Man only had up to the Model 8 at this point, and the color doesn't seem to match anything I've seen from Iron Man up to this year in the comics. Well, there is one design that looks like it, but no, it couldn't be. No, there's no way. Well, as it turns out, the suit Iron Man wore, the one that allowed him to save the day and beat Godzilla, was the Model 1, aka the Mark 1, aka...
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
Now see, why is this disappointing? Because the Model 1 at this point was only about small building level, though it was able to stop a rocket which was been calculated to weigh about 563 tons. Given how we don't really have an idea of how much this Godzilla weighs, especially in this form, which appears to be significantly smaller than before, I'd say it's probably plausible. He's not weaker than Iron Man since he was able to fight against Tigra and beat her, who is stronger than Iron Man, especially since it's in his original armor. And the armor itself even falls apart just simply carrying Godzilla out to the ocean, where Godzilla manages to retrieve the remains and bring him back to his master. Here's a little mini Iron Man power scaling for you. Since the Mark I can lift up to 563 tons based off stopping the rocket feet, and the Mark II is apparently twice as strong as the Mark I, that means the Mark II can lift over 1,100 tons. And the Mark IV in this issue was able to tow 5 battleships, which weigh on average over 47,000 tons. And the Mark IV was stated to be significantly stronger than the Mark III, which should be much stronger than the Mark II, which is twice as strong as the Mark I. Hey, maybe I'll do an Iron Man power level scaling video someday. But regardless if he's still technically stronger than the Mark I Iron Man, it's still kind of embarrassing that he got beat by such a weak opponent. Seems like when they took the name away, the power went with it. Godzilla would also show up again in The Thing issue 31, where he shows up at a movie set involving animatronic of a big devil dinosaur. And despite this being a The Thing issue, he basically sits out the entire fight, thinking that it's part of the movie. Given that it's not the real devil dinosaur and just an animatronic, I'd say it's probably at best small building level. The fact that Godzilla actually struggles for a little bit to fight this thing before actually beating it and going off, again, doesn't look too good on his part. Godzilla makes one final appearance in Mighty Avengers issue 1 from 2007, where he, along with a bunch of other random monsters, are apparently taken over by Mole Man, so Godzilla got mind controlled and then got mind controlled by a different person. Ugh. What's interesting here is that he seems to resemble his classic Japanese appearance from the movies. It doesn't look anything at all like his classic 70s design. Though as you can see here, he's just a head, and he doesn't appear at all anywhere else in this issue, or ever again. Now, because of this, we don't know which members of the Mighty Avengers he actually fights. There's the God of War Ares, who's apparently comparable to Hercules in power but weaker. There's Iron Man, who at this point is actually stronger than Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel, who's apparently small city level normally, but can also reach star and galaxy levels of attack power. Iron Man's Armor Model 16 first appeared in 1997, and is apparently stronger than Miss Marvel's power. So at least small city level up to possibly planet level at the very least. And this was in 1997, so he's probably gone through a few more armor upgrades since then. The Sentry is also a member of the Mighty Avengers, and this guy's also comparable in power to Thor being universe level. But again, since we don't actually see which of these heroes actually fights Godzilla, it's hard to say for certain. But it seems like all the other monsters are able to overwhelm Iron Man. Oh, found it. It's the Model 29, otherwise known as the Extremis armor, from 2005. The Model 29 Extremis armor seems to be at least planet level due to matching characters like Doctor Doom, Namor, who has fought against the Hulk, and The Thing, and even held his own against the Sentry, though Iron Man was clearly weaker, apparently. So yeah, Iron Man went from small building level to planet level in 29 armors. Kinda sucks that it wasn't the big number 30, but 29 I guess we'll have to do. So assuming that Godzilla's strength is comparable to these other monsters who are giving Iron Man trouble, who is planet level with the Model 29 armor, then yeah, Godzilla's at least somewhat reclaimed some of his lost strength. He's at least out of the building level range, but still nowhere close to universe level destruction. Unless he fought against the Sentry. But then again, that's the Sentry at his peak, and I somehow doubt he was going all out against this group. Not to mention, like I said, we don't even know if Godzilla's still alive after this. It'd be kind of anticlimactic to be killed off-screen as a cameo. So to sum this all up, how strong is the Marvel Comics Godzilla? Back in his prime, he was a god. A god that could challenge the other gods. Now, he's just some dinosaur. Above average Dinosaur, able to tackle planet level threats at the very least, and way better than the building level feats he displayed when he was that ugly iguana looking thing. But sadly, the Marvel Comics Godzilla went from the strongest Godzilla to possibly one of the weakest Godzillas, back to an above average Godzilla, but nothing to write home about compared to his heyday. Given how the Dragon Ball Z Goku as a Super Saiyan 3 and post-Crisis Superman both peak around solar system level, Godzilla could definitely wipe the floor with both of them. However, comparing Godzilla to, say, pre-Crisis Superman or modern Dragon Ball Super era Goku, things get a little complicated. See, both of those versions of the characters are basically multiverse level. However, Godzilla scales to Thor, who was able to harm a multiversal level being. And I mean, when you get to the point where characters are already universe level and that makes other universe level characters seem weak by comparison, things just get kinda hard to quantify in terms of power from there. Like, we're talking about hyperverse, outerverse, multiverse. It's like, what do these things even mean? Like I said, it kind of gets to the point where it's like characters are so strong, it's kind of hard to compare them to each other without having them directly face off against one another. In any case, that's all I have to say on that subject for today. Join me next time as we tackle the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla. I hope you all enjoy and look forward to that. See you next time. I need another donut.